Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we have a truly incredible and impactful story to share with you. We will tell the near-death experience of Constanza Altamirano, a woman who not only found peace in the afterlife, but also had a disturbing vision of the Antichrist trying to take over the earth. This is a story full of emotions, twists, and deep messages that will move you. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. Let's go. Hello, my name is Constanza Altamirano. I'm 65 years old and live in San Antonio, Texas. I am an ordinary woman with a life that until recently I considered normal. I was born in Mexico but came to the United States when I was young, looking for a better life. Here, I met the love of my life, Ezekiel, with whom I was married for 39 wonderful years. I have always been a person of faith. I attended church regularly and believed in God. But I confess that my faith was never truly tested until the events I'm about to share with you. I worked as a Spanish teacher at a local school for many years, and Ezekiel was an accountant. We had 2 beautiful children who are now raised and have their own families. Our life was peaceful and happy. We had our routines, our little daily joys. On weekends, we liked to barbecue in the backyard and entertain friends and family. Ezekiel loved telling jokes, always making everyone laugh. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more observant. I have never been a person to believe in supernatural things or mystical experiences. For me, life was what we could see and touch. Death was something distant, something that happened to others, not to us. Oh, how wrong I was. Everything changed when Ezekiel was diagnosed with cancer. Suddenly, our lives turned upside down. Days that were once filled with laughter and planning for the future were now filled with doctor appointments, treatments, and fear. Very scared. Seeing my husband, always so strong and full of life, waste away day after day was the most painful experience I have ever experienced. I felt helpless, unable to help the man I loved. And I confess I began to question my faith. How could God allow so much suffering? When Ezekiel passed away, I felt as if a part of me had died with him. The days that followed were a blur of sadness and despair. I could barely get out of bed, let alone take care of myself or the house. My children tried to help me, but I pushed them away. I didn't want their compassion. I wanted my husband back. It was in this state of deep depression that I decided to visit Ezekiel's tomb for the first time since the funeral. I had no idea that this visit would change my life forever, in ways I could never have imagined. What happened that day at the cemetery was the beginning of a journey that challenged everything I believed I knew about life, death, and what lies beyond. It was an autumn Thursday when I decided to visit Ezekiel's tomb. The sky was cloudy, as if reflecting my mood. I remember driving to the cemetery on a kind of autopilot, my mind wandering between memories of the past and the pain of the present. When I arrived at the cemetery, I noticed something strange. There was a man standing near Ezekiel's tomb. He had his back to me, wearing a dark suit. For a moment, I thought it might be one of Ezekiel's friends, but as I got closer, I realized I didn't recognize him. I walked towards the tomb, feeling my heart beat faster with each step. The man didn't seem to notice my presence. When he was just a few meters away, something even stranger happened. The man just disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he was no longer there. I stood frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. Had I imagined all that? Was grief making me see things? I shook my head, trying to clear these thoughts, and focused on why I was there. I approached Ezekiel's tomb, holding the bouquet of red roses I had brought. They were his favorite. As I placed the flowers on the tombstone, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. At first, I thought it was just the emotion of the moment, the pain of loss hitting me once again. But the pain didn't go away. In fact, it became more intense. I started to feel short of breath, as if something was pressing on my chest. My vision began to blur and I felt my legs weaken. I tried to hold on to the tombstone, but my fingers couldn't grasp anything. The last thing I remember was falling to my knees in the cold grass of the cemetery. Then everything went dark. What happened next is difficult to describe in words. It's like trying to explain colors to someone who has never seen them. But I will do my best to share this extraordinary experience. As darkness enveloped me, I felt a strange sense of peace. All the weight I had been carrying over the past few months, the pain, the grief, the anger, it all seemed to melt away. It was like I was floating in a calm, dark ocean. Suddenly, I noticed a light in the distance. It was a tiny dot at first, but it got bigger and brighter. I felt drawn to her, as if she were a powerful magnet. There was no fear, just intense curiosity, and a feeling that I was going home. As I got closer to the light, I started to hear sounds. At first, they were just indistinct murmurs, but they soon turned into clear voices. With shock and shame, I recognized my own voice among them. They were the words of anger and despair that I had directed to God after Ezekiel's death. "Why did you take him from me? How could you allow so much suffering? I hate you." Each word echoed around me, making me feel small and regretful. But then, I heard other voices. These were conversations I had with Ezekiel over the years, moments of joy, of love, of companionship. I heard our laughter, our promises of eternal love, even our silly arguments about who should wash the dishes. Each memory was like a balm for my wounded soul. As these voices surrounded me, I continued moving toward the light. It got brighter and brighter, but somehow it didn't hurt my eyes. It was a warm, comforting glow. Then, suddenly, it was there, immersed in light. And in that moment, I felt something I had never experienced before. It was love, but not the kind of love we know on earth. It was a pure, unconditional love that seemed to fill every part of my being. I felt completely accepted, with all my flaws and imperfections. In this state of pure ecstasy, I realized I was not alone. There was a presence with me. I can't describe it in physical terms because it wasn't something I could see with my eyes. It was more of a feeling, an awareness that I was in the presence of something much bigger than myself. And then, I heard a voice. Not with my ears, but inside my mind. It was a voice that conveyed infinite wisdom, compassion, and love. Instinctively, I knew I was in the presence of God. "Welcome, my daughter," said the voice. "You have a lot of questions." In that moment, all the doubts, all the anger, and all the fear I had felt over the past few months came flooding back. But before I could express anything, I felt a wave of understanding wash over me. It was as if God could see into my soul, understanding every thought, every emotion. "I know you have suffered a lot," the voice continued, "but know that Ezekiel's time on earth had come to an end. He fulfilled his mission, he touched the lives he was supposed to touch, he learned the lessons he needed to learn." Those words should have brought me comfort, but instead I felt a pang of guilt. But I cursed him, I thought. I doubted you, I questioned your existence. The answer came immediately, wrapped in a love that dispelled all my guilt. "My daughter, your love for Ezekiel is a reflection of my love for you. Your pain is understandable. I do not judge you for it. Instead, I am here to comfort her and show her that there is much more beyond what her earthly eyes can see." It was at that moment that I realized this was not the end. It was just the beginning of a journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and the universe itself. As I was immersed in this divine light, I felt as if all the knowledge in the universe was within my reach. It was an overwhelming sensation, as if my mind was expanding to accommodate information far beyond human comprehension. God, or the presence that I perceived as God, began to show me things that I never imagined were possible. I saw the creation of the universe, the explosion of light and energy that gave rise to everything we know. I saw the formation of galaxies, stars, planets. I saw the Earth form, life emerge from the depths of the oceans and evolve over billions of years. But it wasn't just images I saw. It was as if I could feel every moment, as if I were part of every atom, every particle of existence. I understood, in a way that goes beyond words, how everything is interconnected, how each action, each thought, has an impact on the whole. "See, my daughter," said the divine voice, "how precious each life is, how each existence has a purpose in the great tapestry of creation." And then, to my surprise, I saw Ezekiel. Not as I knew him on earth, aged and weakened by illness, but radiant, full of life and joy. He smiled at me, and in that smile, I saw all the love we shared throughout our lives together. Ezekiel fulfilled his purpose, God explained. He brought love, joy, and wisdom to many lives. Now he continues his journey on another plane of existence. I wanted to run to Ezekiel, hug him, tell him how much I missed him. But something stopped me, a deep understanding that this was not the time for our reunion. "There is more you need to see and understand," said the voice. And so I was taken on a journey through time and space. I saw ancient civilizations that flourished and disappeared. I saw wars and periods of peace. I saw the progress of humanity and also its mistakes. I saw how the actions of a single person could trigger events that affected millions. "Each life is an opportunity to learn and grow," explained God. "The difficulties, the losses, the joys, everything is part of the process of evolution of the soul." I understood then that Ezekiel's death, as painful as it was for me, was part of a greater plan. It was not a punishment, nor a cruelty, but rather a necessary transition to the next stage of his existence. But there was more. God showed me something that left me astonished. Past lives. I saw myself at different times, in different bodies, living different experiences. In some, Ezekiel was by my side. In others, we were strangers. I understood that our souls had been connected for much longer than I could have imagined. "The relationships you form on earth are deeper and older than you can understand," said God. "Every encounter, every connection, has a purpose." This revelation filled me with a peace I had never experienced before. The pain of losing Ezekiel was still there, but now it was accompanied by a deeper understanding and acceptance of the natural cycle of existence. As I absorbed all this information, I felt a shift. The light around me began to pulse, and I had the feeling I was about to see something even more surprising and perhaps disturbing. The light around me changed, becoming more intense and pulsating. I felt like I was being transported through time and space again, but this time, instead of looking at the past, I was being launched into the future. The images that began to form before me were frightening and confusing. I saw cities burning, panicked crowds running through the streets, the sky darkened by clouds of toxic smoke. It was as if all the progress humanity had achieved was crumbling before my eyes. "What is this?" I asked, feeling a growing fear take over me. The divine voice, now with a deeper tone, replied, "What you are seeing, my daughter, is a possibility of the future. A path that humanity can follow if it does not learn the necessary lessons." The scenes continued to unfold before me. I saw the emergence of a charismatic figure, someone who seemed to offer hope in the midst of chaos. Crowds followed him, mesmerized by his words and promises. But there was something wrong, something sinister behind his benevolent appearance. "The Antichrist," said the voice, confirming my suspicions. "The one who will come to try to divert humanity from its true purpose." I saw how this figure used advanced technology to control people's minds, how he manipulated governments and economies to create a global system of oppression. It was terrifying to see how easily people gave up their freedom in exchange for false promises of security and prosperity. But not all was lost. In the midst of the darkness, I saw points of light, people who resisted, who refused to bow down to evil. I saw communities forming, people helping each other, keeping the flame of hope and love alive. "Remember, Constanza," said the divine voice, "the future is not written in stone. What you see is a warning, a possibility. The choices each individual makes today shape tomorrow." This vision of the future filled me with a sense of urgency and responsibility. I realized that every act of kindness, every gesture of love, no matter how small, could make a difference in this battle between good and evil. "But what can I do?" I asked, feeling small compared to the magnitude of what I had witnessed. Live with love, replied the voice. Spread the light you experienced here. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every gesture of forgiveness is a powerful weapon against the forces of darkness. I then understood that my journey on earth had not yet ended. There was a greater purpose for my life, a mission I needed to fulfill. As the visions of the future faded, I felt a shift in the environment around me. The intense light gave way to a familiar and welcoming scene. To my surprise, I found myself in a place that looked a lot like the home I shared with Ezekiel on earth. It was our living room with the old leather sofa that Ezekiel loved so much, the shelves full of books and family photos on the walls. But there was something different. Everything felt more vivid, more real somehow, like I was seeing things for the first time. And then, he was there. Ezekiel, my love, my companion of so many years. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, smiling at me with that smile I knew so well. "Constanza," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered. "It's good to see you, mi amor." I ran to him, my heart overflowing with emotion. We hugged, and in that moment I felt all the love we shared throughout our lives together. There was no more pain, no more suffering, just pure, complete joy. "Ezekiel," I said through happy tears, "I missed you so much. Why did you have to leave?" He held my hands in his, looking deeply into my eyes. "My dear, I never really left. I was with you the whole time, even if you couldn't see or feel me." Ezekiel explained to me that death, as we understand it on earth, is just a transition. May our souls continue their journey, learning and evolving. "Do you remember all the times you felt my presence after I left?" he asked. "That familiar scent in the air, the sound of my favorite song playing without explanation? That was me, trying to comfort you, to show you that I'm still here." We talked for what seemed like hours. Ezekiel told me about his experience after leaving his physical body, about the wonders he had witnessed and the lessons he had learned. He talked about how he watched our family on earth, taking care of us the best he could. "But why am I here now?" I asked, fearing that this meant I too had died. Ezekiel smiled gently. "No, mi amor. Your time on earth is not over yet. You are here because you needed this experience, this understanding to fulfill your purpose." He explained to me that I had an important mission to accomplish, that the visions I had witnessed, both past and future, were a call to action. "You need to come back, Constanza," he said, his voice full of love and understanding. "There are people who need to hear your story, who need your love and your wisdom." I felt my heart squeeze. The thought of leaving Ezekiel again was painful. "But I want to be with you," I protested. Ezekiel hugged me once again. "And we will be together forever. But not now. Now you have a job to do, and I will be with you always, guiding and protecting." I then understood that this was not a goodbye, but rather a see you later, that our love transcended the barriers of life and death. As we separated from the hug, I noticed the environment around us starting to change again. The light was returning, brighter than before. "It's time to go back, mi amor," Ezekiel said, his voice growing distant. "Remember, live with love, spread the light, and we will see you again." With those words, I felt myself being pulled back, through the light, back into the world I knew. But now, I was changed, transformed by the experience she had lived, and the love she had felt. The first thing I felt was the coldness of the grass beneath my hands. Little by little, I became aware of my body again. My eyes slowly opened, adjusting to the daylight. I was back at the cemetery, lying next to Ezekiel's grave. For a moment, I was confused. Everything I had experienced, the light, the visions, the encounter with Ezekiel, felt so real, so vivid. Had it just been a dream? A hallucination caused by stress and grief? But then I felt something different. A deep peace, an understanding that went beyond words. I knew, deep down in my being, that what I had experienced was real. More real, perhaps, than anything I had ever experienced in my normal life. I tried to get up, but my body was weak. It was then that I noticed a man approaching. He was wearing the uniform of cemetery workers and had a worried look on his face. "Ma'am," he called, approaching cautiously. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I recognized your voice. It was Gabriel, the cemetery caretaker. I knew him by sight, from the few times I had visited Ezekiel's tomb in the previous months. "I'm fine, Gabriel," I replied, surprised by the calm in my own voice. "I just need a moment to compose myself." He helped me sit up, still with a worried expression. "The lady passed out," he explained. "I saw you fall and came running, but when I got here you looked different, like you were somewhere else." I smiled, understanding what he meant. I was, Gabriel. I was somewhere else. He looked at me confused, probably thinking I was still disoriented from fainting. "Do you want me to call an ambulance, ma'am? You could have hit your head." "No, it's not necessary," I assured him. "I'm feeling better than ever, actually." And it was true. Despite my physical weakness, I felt renewed inside. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The pain of losing Ezekiel was still there, but now it was accompanied by a deeper understanding, an acceptance that brought peace. Gabriel helped me up, and I was surprised to realize how much time had passed. The sun was already setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. He had arrived at the cemetery in the morning, which meant he had been out for hours. "Are you sure you don't want me to call someone?" Gabriel asked once again, still worried. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling a rush of gratitude for his kindness. "I'm sure, Gabriel. Thank you for your concern. I'm ready to go home now." As I walked toward my car, I felt like I was seeing the world with new eyes. The trees seemed greener, the sky bluer. I could feel life pulsing through everything around me. And for the first time since Ezekiel's death, I felt hope. A renewed hope not just for me, but for all humanity. I knew I had a job to do, a story to tell, and I was ready to start. In the days following my cemetery experience, I felt a profound change within me. It was as if he had woken up from a long sleep, seeing the world clearly for the first time. The colors seemed more vivid, the sounds clearer, and I could feel a pulsing energy in everything around me. My kids noticed the change immediately. When I first saw them after the incident, their eyes widened in surprise. "Mom," my daughter Maria asked hesitantly, "you look different." I smiled at her, feeling love overflowing from my heart. "I am, darling. I've been through something extraordinary." I sat down with them and told them everything that had happened. About light, about visions of the past and future, about my meeting with Ezekiel. I spoke about the unconditional love I had felt and the deeper understanding of life and death I now had. At first, they looked at me with concern, probably thinking I had had some kind of emotional breakdown. But as I continued speaking, I saw understanding and amazement grow in his eyes. "Mom," my son Carlos said in a choked voice, "you seem at peace." And I was. For the first time since Ezekiel's death, I felt a deep, lasting peace. The pain of loss was still there, but now it was accompanied by a greater understanding, an acceptance of the natural cycle of life and death. In the days and weeks that followed, I began to see changes in my everyday life. Things that used to irritate or stress me now seemed insignificant. I found a patience and compassion I didn't know I possessed. I started paying more attention to the people around me. I noticed the sadness in the supermarket cashier's eyes and took a moment to ask how he was doing. I saw the tiredness in the young mother's posture in the park and offered to help with her baby. Small acts of kindness that previously would have gone unnoticed now seemed crucial. I also began to feel a deeper connection with nature. I started waking up earlier to watch the sunrise. marveling at the beauty of the world waking up to a new day. I began cultivating a small garden, finding immense joy in watching the plants grow and flourish under my care. But the most significant change was in my perspective on life and death. Death, which once terrified me, now seemed like just a transition, a passage to another state of being. Not that it lessened the pain of loss. I still missed Ezekiel every day, but now there was a deeper understanding, an acceptance that brought comfort. I started talking openly about my experience. At first, just with close friends and family. But soon, word spread. People started looking for me, curious about what I had experienced. Some looked at me with skepticism, others with fascination. But to my surprise, many found comfort in my words. People who had lost loved ones, who were struggling with terminal illnesses, or who were simply searching for a deeper meaning in life seemed to find hope in my story. One day, while walking through the park, I felt a familiar presence next to me. I couldn't see Ezekiel, but I knew he was there, walking with me as he had done so many times in life. "Am I doing the right thing, mi amor?" I asked in a low voice. I didn't hear a response with my ears, but I felt it in my heart, a feeling of approval, of love, of encouragement. I smiled, knowing I was on the right path, that I was fulfilling the purpose shown to me in that extraordinary experience. And so, day after day, I continued my journey, sharing love, spreading light, and preparing myself and others for the challenges the future could bring. I knew the path would not be easy, but I was ready to face it, strengthened by the love and understanding I had received. As my story spread, I began to face a variety of reactions. While many found comfort and hope in my words, others reacted with skepticism and even hostility. One day, I was invited to speak at a support group for grieving people. I accepted, feeling it was an opportunity to help those who were going through the same kind of pain I had experienced. When I arrived at the meeting location, a small room in the local church, I could feel the heavy atmosphere of sadness and loss. I began to share my experience, talking about the light, the unconditional love I felt, and my encounter with Ezekiel. I saw faces light up with hope, tears of relief being shed. But then, I noticed a man in the back of the room. His arms were crossed and his face was contorted into an expression of anger. When I finished speaking and opened the space for questions, he was the first to speak. "How dare you?" he practically shouted, standing up. "How can you come here and feed people these lies? My wife died 6 months ago and there was no light, there was no love, only pain and darkness." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. For a moment I felt destabilized, but then I remembered the love I had experienced, the deeper understanding I had gained. I took a deep breath and approached the man. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said softly, "and I understand your anger." I felt anger too. I felt pain. I still miss my husband every day. The man looked at me, surprised by my calm approach. "I'm not here to convince anyone," I continued. "I'm just sharing what I've lived, what I've experienced. I don't have all the answers. But what I can say is that the love that you feel for your wife, the connection that you had, that doesn't die. That continues, in ways that perhaps we cannot fully understand now." I saw tears begin to form in the man's eyes. His posture relaxed a little. I just wanted to see you one more time," he said, his voice breaking. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling his pain. "I know, and maybe one day you'll see her again. But for now, she lives on through the love you shared, through the memories you hold." The man nodded slowly, tears now running freely down his face. I hugged him, feeling his pain mingle with my own, but also feeling that deep connection that unites us all. This incident made me realize that my journey would not be easy, that there would be those who would question, who would doubt, who would react with anger. But it also showed me the power of compassion, empathy, and unconditional love that I had experienced. In the months that followed, I continued to share my story. I spoke at support groups, at churches, at community centers. I wrote a book about my experience, which to my surprise became a local bestseller. I received letters from people across the country, some sharing their own near-death experiences, others expressing how my story had changed their perspective on life and death. But not everything was rosy. I faced criticism from skeptics who accused me of exploiting the vulnerability of grieving people. Scientists have tried to explain my experience as a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain. Some religious leaders accused me of heresy. Every criticism, every accusation, was painful. There were times when I questioned whether I should continue sharing my story. But then, I remembered the purpose I had been shown, the importance of spreading light and love in a world that often felt so dark. And so, I continued. Not to convince anyone, not to prove herself right, but simply to offer hope and comfort to those who were open to receiving it. One night, after a particularly difficult day filled with challenging interviews and harsh criticism, I sat on my porch, looking up at the stars. I felt that familiar presence next to me. "Am I doing the right thing, Ezekiel?" I asked in a low voice. Sometimes it seems so hard. I didn't hear a response with my ears, but I felt it in my heart. A wave of love, of encouragement, of strength. And I knew at that moment that I was not alone on this journey, that every word shared, every heart touched, every seed of hope planted, was part of something bigger. I looked at the starry sky and smiled. The road ahead would still be challenging, but I was ready to face it. With love, with compassion, and with the certainty that there was something more beyond this earthly life. So, what did you think of this incredible story? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell to be notified with each new video. Let's bring more people the hope that there is life beyond what the eyes can see.